There's a question that almost every survivor of narcissistic abuse asks at some point. Was that actually narcissistic personality disorder? Or was I just with someone difficult? Today we're going to answer that. Not to label anyone, but because knowing the difference changes everything about how you understand what happened to you. And if this is already resonating, subscribe. I post every week and every video goes deeper into the psychology behind these patterns. What is narcissistic personality disorder, actually? Narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is a clinical diagnosis defined by a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, a constant need for admiration, and a fundamental lack of empathy. It's listed in the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual used by mental health professionals. The key word is pervasive. This isn't someone who is occasionally arrogant or who needs reassurance sometimes, or who struggles with empathy when they're stressed. NPD is a stable, consistent pattern that shows up across contexts, across relationships, and over time. And critically, it is not the same as having a difficult personality. Most people have traits that make them hard to be around sometimes. NPD is a different thing entirely. Here's how to tell the difference. Sign 1. Grandiosity that has no basis in reality. Everyone has moments of pride. Everyone inflates their accomplishments sometimes. That's human. What's different with NPD is a grandiosity that persists regardless of evidence. The person with NPD genuinely believes they are exceptional, more intelligent, more capable, more important than others, in a way that is completely disconnected from their actual achievements or circumstances. They don't think they're great because of something they did. They believe they're great as a fixed fact about who they are. And this belief is not something that can be updated by reality. Failure becomes someone else's fault. Criticism becomes evidence of the other person's limitations. The grandiose self-image is protected at all costs. What makes this a sign of NPD rather than just arrogance? It's constant. It's pervasive. And no amount of evidence shifts it. Sign 2. A persistent need for admiration. The person with NPD doesn't just enjoy being appreciated, they require admiration to function. Without a continuous supply of attention, validation, and recognition, they become destabilized, irritable, dysregulated. This need is often subtle in the early stages of a relationship. The person seems charismatic, enthusiastic, engaged. But over time, the pattern becomes clearer. Conversations consistently return to them. Achievements are compared. Attention must be directed their way. If it isn't, there are consequences. Withdrawal, resentment, or overt attempts to recapture the spotlight. The difference between this and normal social behavior is the intensity, the persistence, and what happens when the admiration is not provided. Sign 3. Lack of empathy, but not in the way people think. When most people hear lack of empathy, they picture someone cold and robotic, obviously indifferent to others' pain. NPD doesn't usually look like that. People with NPD often appear highly attuned to others' emotions. In the early stages of a relationship, they can seem extraordinarily perceptive. They notice what you need, they respond to your moods. They seem to really get it. But what's actually happening is different from empathy. They are reading emotional states as information, understanding what you feel in order to know what you'll respond to. The motivation is not to connect with your experience, but to calibrate their approach to it. The lack of empathy becomes visible over time. When their needs conflict with yours consistently lose. When you're in pain and it doesn't serve them to acknowledge it, they don't. When your distress is inconvenient, it becomes your problem. This is one of the most important distinctions between NPD and simply being selfish or self-absorbed. The pattern is consistent, and it always serves the same function. Sign 4. A sense of entitlement that shapes their behavior. People with NPD genuinely believe, that they deserve special treatment. Not as a preference, but as a right. Rules that apply to others don't apply to them. Consideration they would never extend to you is expected from you without question. This shows up in practical ways that can seem almost absurd from the outside. They expect to be served first. They become genuinely outraged when they wait in line like everyone else. They assume their time is more valuable than others. They expect exceptions to be made for them. And when the special treatment they expect is not provided, the response is disproportionate. Not just disappointment, rage, contempt, or a systematic effort to punish the person who failed to recognize their entitlement. Sign 5. Interpersonal exploitation. This is one of the criteria that makes people most uncomfortable because it sounds predatory, deliberate, calculated. It often isn't. Many people with NPD exploit others without being fully conscious of doing so. They use people as instruments, for status, for validation, for advancement, because that's simply how they relate to the world. The question they implicitly ask about every relationship is not, who is this person, but what can this person provide? This is why relationships with people with NPD often feel fine, even wonderful, as long as you're providing what they need, and why they deteriorate so quickly when you're not. It's not that they turn against you, it's that the instrumental function of the relationship has ended. And once that happens, the warmth and attention that seem so real simply switch off. Sign 6. Envy, and the belief that others envy them. NPD involves a particular relationship with envy that goes in both directions. People with NPD often experience intense envy toward others who have status, recognition, or qualities they want. This envy is often expressed as contempt, belittling the achievements of others, minimizing their success, finding reasons to dismiss what they can't have. But simultaneously, they believe that others envy them, that they are the subject of other people's jealousy and resentment. This belief isn't usually based on evidence. It's a projection that serves the grandiose self-image. Of course people are jealous of someone this exceptional. Both directions of this envy, the envy they feel and the envy they believe they inspire, shape how they relate to the people around them in ways that are often confusing and destabilizing to experience. Sign 7. Arrogant, dismissive behavior that is consistent across contexts. The final sign, and the one that most reliably distinguishes NPD from situational behavior, is consistency. Everyone can be arrogant sometimes. Everyone dismisses people they don't respect occasionally. But with NPD, this is a pattern that shows up across contexts, with strangers, with family, with colleagues, with friends. The contempt for others, the dismissiveness, the sense of superiority. These aren't reactions to specific people or situations. They're a pervasive feature of how the person moves through the world. This consistency is important because it's the thing that's hardest to rationalize. You can explain away one instance. You can contextualize two. But when you see the same pattern with the waiter, with their parents, with their oldest friends, with you, what you're seeing is the person, not the moment. What this means if you recognize these signs. A formal NPD diagnosis can only be made by a mental health professional. And diagnosis isn't the point of this video. The point is this: if you recognize this pattern, if what I've described maps onto your experience of someone close to you, you are not overreacting. You are not misremembering. You are not too sensitive. What you experienced was real. The confusion was a product of the dynamic, not a product of your perception. And the difficulty you had leaving, or explaining it, or convincing anyone else of what was happening, that's not your failure. That's what this pattern produces in the people around it. Understanding the clinical picture doesn't change the past, but it can change how you carry it. Subscribe for more videos on psychology, narcissism, and how to protect your mind. I'll see you next week.